Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. First up, let's look at the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. A few days ago, a hospital in Houston in United States of America practiced something called convalescent plasma therapy. What does that mean? There was a patient A who tested positive for COVID-19. But over a period of time, this patient A also recovered. Ultimately, what happened? Plasma from this patient A was extracted. How? When this patient A, he was infected by a virus which causes this disease COVID-19, and when this patient also recovered, which means that this patient has developed antibodies because of which this virus is not in a position to attack this individual again. Now, if these antibodies are then transferred to another critically ill patient, this may save the life of this patient as well. This is what we call convalescent plasma therapy, where the plasma from one individual is transferred to another individual. But this is something which has not happened for the first time. During the time of the Spanish flu, way back in 1918, United States of America practiced this. Hong Kong, for example, practiced this, used this during SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. One important thing for your prelims is that India has not practiced this. That is why permission is required, clinical approval is required, and then convalescent plasma therapy can be used in India. Something else is required for the prelims. World Health Organization in 2014 released guidelines for plasma extraction, which means that if the plasma is to be extracted from a donor, what are the guidelines that you will have to follow? These guidelines in 2014 were issued by the World Health Organization. Guideline number 1, permission of the donor is necessary. Without the permission, you cannot practice plasma extraction. Number 2, let's say for example, A is the donor from which plasma is to be extracted. Now, if you want to extract plasma again for another time from the same donor, if this donor is a man, you will have to wait for 12 weeks. If the donor is a woman, you will have to wait for 16 weeks. To make it simpler, plasma extraction guidelines were issued in 2014. Permission of the donor is necessary. If this donor A has donated the plasma and you want to extract the plasma again from the same donor, if the donor is a man, you'll have to wait 12 weeks after the first donation. And if the donor is a woman, then if the plasma needs to be collected again from the same woman donor, it must be done after 16 weeks of the first donation. Let's look at something else. When a new virus outbreak happens, there are three predictable scenarios through which the spread of this virus can be contained. Number 1 is block at source. Let's say, for example, we have to prevent the spread of coronavirus in India. What is the solution for that? All those who are coming from abroad, they are to be identified, they are to be tested, and then we have to isolate them as well, so that these individuals coming from abroad will not be in a position to infect the local population. But it's been a week after all incoming flights have been stopped. And even if today we are hearing about 100 cases every single day, that means we have not been in a position to block the spread of this transmission at source. Which means in India, for example, to block its source, this would have meant identifying and isolating every incoming foreign traveler carrying this virus to ensure that they did not pass on this infection. It is almost certain that this has not happened. Second is community transmission. There is a traveler from abroad. He got in touch with few local individuals, and then this virus got transmitted. Through these individuals, they got in touch with other individuals as well, and the virus spread. Community transmission is when this virus gets into the community and infects a substantial fraction of the population. When the virus infects more and more people, ultimately those with weak immune system, they will die. But in this process of community transmission, the population also develops immunity to this virus, after which the infections, they reduce, they slow down, and ultimately this virus is rendered ineffective. This is what we call herd immunity. This is something many people argue at this point in time in India. They say India is a very poor country and we cannot afford to lock down this country for 21 days. What are these people advocating? What they're advocating is that those who are suffering from cold or flu-like symptoms, they should be asked to stay indoors so that others can go on with their normal life routine. Even if virus spreads, that is not going to cause much harm, because more than 80% of these cases, what you need to be kept in isolation at your home. No hospitalization is required, and ultimately you won't die. Only few percentage people will die, but only those people will die which have weak immune system, those who are elderly, those who are already suffering from few ailments. But through this process of community transmission, you are going to inject herd immunity. Ultimately, people will become immune to this virus. This virus will be rendered ineffective because the economic costs of locking down the country for 21 days are huge. Even if this virus spreads, it may lead to the death of 1 lakh, 2 lakh, or 10 lakh people. These are not my words, these are the words of some experts who say that even if the virus spreads, it may lead to the death of 10 lakh individuals, but it is also going to save the jobs and incomes of 1 billion people. So one way in which we can prevent the spread of this virus is by blocking it at source or community transmission. Third, vaccine. When a vaccine will be invented. But even this vaccine will take 16 to 18 months or minimum of a year, because you'll have to conduct trials. It requires regulatory approvals. It's going to take a lot of time. Most scientists in India believe that this SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus which causes COVID-19, this will follow community transmission stage in India. That means the virus will be transmitted locally, but it will lead to possible eventual immunity. But let's look at something else. We are waging a war against COVID-19, but this war is also infringing on the citizens' right to privacy. That is why our thumbnail talks about privacy here. In times of crisis, governments may curb our fundamental rights because it is in national interest, it is in public interest. During the Second World War, for example, the right to free speech was reduced. British installations during the Second World War, they were plastered with posters which said, "Careless talks costs lives." Critics in India argue that if we are waging a war against COVID-19, we are also infringing on the fundamental rights to privacy without adding anything to the effort. How? Last month, 722 people, passengers, they landed in Delhi. Their details were shared online. Apps are being developed. What do these apps do? Let's say, for example, you download an app. When you are moving along a street, you will be notified that you may be in contact with a COVID-19 suspect. How? Because all these passengers, or all those who have tested positive, or all those who have been quarantined inside their homes, tomorrow when they leave their homes and you're also walking along the road, all their GPS locations are being tracked, which means if you are in contact with any of these individuals, this app will notify you. Now you may say it is for the betterment of the larger population, but at the same time it violates right to privacy. On top of that, tomorrow, let's say for example, I am an individual. I was quarantined inside my home for 14 days. Now what has happened? I am also stamped with ink. My hand is stamped with indelible ink. My GPS is being monitored. My details have been shared online. Tomorrow, if I apply for an insurance, it is going to negatively impact me as well. There have been instances in some states where those who have been quarantined inside their homes, outside their homes, their walls have been plastered with notices. Is pasting a notice branding the quarantine? Is it a legitimate process? Perhaps no. So even if we are fighting a war against a pandemic, it should not lead to the violation of fundamental rights. Now let's look at a news on page 16 of today's Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. If you look at ibex or a wild goat, there are two variants of it, Himalayan Ibex and Siberian Ibex. Now a study has been released by Zoological Survey of India which has proven beyond any reasonable doubt that Himalayan Ibex and Siberian Ibex, they are two distinct genetic species. So far as your prelims is concerned, you may be asked about Ibex. What is the geographical distribution of this wild goat? Ibex is found in India, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Mongolia, Pakistan, southern Siberia and China. But so far as India is concerned, it is mainly distributed in the trans-Himalayan ranges of the Union territories of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir, also Himachal Pradesh. That is something that you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at some of the editorials and columns. First up, everyone counts. If you look at NPR, National Population Register, it is a register which contains the names and details of all the usual residents of India. Now, who are the usual residents of India? Those who want to stay in India for 6 or more months, or those who have already stayed in India for 6 or more months. That means usual residents can be citizens, usual residents can be foreigners as well. All those who have stayed in India or any part of India for 6 or more months, or those who want to stay in India for 6 or more months, they are the usual residents. And NPR is a register which identifies and stores the details of all the usual residents of India. This NPR is prepared under the provisions of Citizenship Act of 1955 as well as the Citizenship Rules of 2003. This NPR was conducted for the first time in 2010. It was then updated in 2015. Now this NPR was to be carried out in 2020 as well. But the NPR of 2010 and NPR of 2020 are different. How? In 2010, these details were sought from the people. Now in 2020, this NPR form will ask for additional details. For example, what is the date and what is the place of the birth of your parents? This, many people argued, is the first step towards a nationwide national registry of citizens. That is why many state governments, they have been opposing the 2020 variant of this NPR exercise. Last year, towards the end of the last year and before the coronavirus outbreak, there were lots of protests against Citizenship Amendment Act, against NRC, against this 2020 version of NPR. Now you need to know about the census. Census exercise is carried out every 10 years. That means the next census was planned in Census 2021. It was to be conducted in two phases. Phase number 1, house listing activity would be conducted and this NPR would be updated. This phase was scheduled for April to September. The second phase would have started in February 2021 and this phase would talk about population enumeration. What the central government has done, this first phase has been postponed. This editorial says that this unexpected postponement or suspension of the first phase of Census 2021, it has also opened a new window of opportunity. Several states which have opposed this new form of NPR, for example, states such as West Bengal, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Bihar, etc. This new opportunity is reconciliation between the center and the states. Center and states should reconcile, divorce conflict, and embrace cooperation. This editorial says the pandemic is a reminder that the future of humanity is collective and cannot be fragmented. The center can turn this crisis into an opportunity and restore mutually respectful terms for relations with states. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper editorial. Now let's look at another editorial, political pardon. This is Sri Lanka. It was a crisis in the northern and eastern part of Sri Lanka. The Tamil minority, they were discriminated against, and the Tamil minority, led by LTTE, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, they wanted a separate homeland in the northern and eastern part of Sri Lanka because they were dominated by the Sinhalese Buddhist majority, discriminated against as well. This civil war came to an end in 2009 when Sri Lanka was ruled by President Mahinda Rajapaksa. And in this war, worst human rights violations were committed against the Tamil minority. In December 2000, what happened? A group of people, a group of Tamil minority who were displaced in Sri Lanka, they went back to their homes in Mirusuvil, which is in Jaffna province, Jaffna peninsula of Sri Lanka. The group of people included three boys aged 5, 13 and 15. They were captured, blindfolded, killed as well. And then they were buried in unnamed graves as well. Their bodies were later found in a sewer with their throats slit. Inquiry was conducted. 5 soldiers were indicted, but only one was found guilty. And he was sentenced to death. And now what has happened? This guilty army personnel has been pardoned by the president of Sri Lanka, who is the brother of Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was the president in 2009. This editorial is very critical of this pardon. The editorial says that this was a rare instance of justice, and this rare instance of justice has also been nullified, which basically means that this pardon sends a signal to Tamils that they should not expect justice for war crimes. This editorial is highly critical of this pardon, which the newspaper says is political in nature, keeping in mind the Sinhalese voters. That is what you need to understand from this editorial. Now let's look at the practice questions. Number 1. With reference to question hour, consider the following statements. The questions can be addressed to private members as well, correct? Because what is question hour? You can ask questions. Normally the questions are asked to the ministers. But sometimes, for example, if there is a private member who has introduced a private member's bill in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, question hour can also be used to ask questions to these private members about these bills. So although normally question hour is reserved for asking questions to the ministers, but you can also ask questions, address questions to private members as well. It is preceded by 0 hour in the house. No. First there is question hour, then there can be 0 hour, and then there is the agenda of the house. So this statement is wrong. An unstarred question can be followed by supplementary questions. No. Question can be either starred, which is followed by an asterisk mark, or it can be unstarred, where there is no asterisk mark. If the question is a starred one, you can also ask supplementary questions, because for an starred question, the answer is given by a minister orally. When the answer is given orally, you can also ask supplementary questions. But for an unstarred question, the answer is given by a minister in a written form and no supplementary questions can be asked. Unlike 0 hour, question hour is mentioned in the rules of procedure. Correct. 0 hour is not mentioned in the rules of business and procedure of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, but question hour is mentioned. So only statement 1 and 4 are correct, which means D is the correct answer. Question number 2. With reference to western disturbance, which of the following statements is or are correct? Number 1. The western disturbances are the primary reason for rainfall during the non-monsoon months in northern India. Correct? These are extratropical depressions which reach India after crossing the dry areas of Iran, Afghanistan and Pakistan. Correct? These disturbances can even reach up to the northeastern region of the country. It is rare but happens sometimes, so even this statement is correct. So D is the correct answer. Question number 3, with reference to social religious reform movements of the 19th century, who among the following were associated with Rahnumai Mazda-e-Snan Sabha, Religious Reform Association? Dadabhai Naroji, Naroji Furdonji, S.S. Bengali, B.P. Wadia? No, he was a political activist. So 1, 2, 3, B is the correct answer. Question number 4. The chairman of public sector banks are selected by the Banks Board Bureau. Question number 5. Which of the following adopted a law on data protection and privacy for its citizens known as General Data Protection Regulation in April 2016 and started implementation of it from 25th May 2018? The answer is the European Union. Let's look at two mains-based questions. Answers should be in less than 200 words. Number 1. What policy instruments were deployed to contain the Great Economic Depression? Question number 2. Critically examine the effects of globalization on the aged population in India. That is it from our newspaper analysis for today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.